take a timeout.
Hi, I'm Brian Kenny, and welcome to ESPN Classic's Top 5 Reasons You Can't Blame, a series that takes a fresh look at sports personalities who were remembered largely for their mistakes, controversial moments, or questionable decisions. Down 3-2 to the Blue Jays, the Phillies led 6-5 in the 9th inning of Game 6 in the 1993 World Series. They brought in their ace closer, Mitch Williams. He gave up a walk-off home run to the Blue Jays' Joe Carter. And before the cheering died in Toronto, the man once affectionately called Wild Thing became public enemy #1 in the city of brotherly love. We will, here on this program, give you the top 5 reasons you can't blame Mitch Williams for Philadelphia losing that World Series. First, let's examine the events that led to that fateful pitch in Toronto.
They had a reputation of being a rough, tough group of guys.
Crazy, insane, probably isn't going over the edge. They played the game right, but they were nuts.
Just a bunch of animals. When the umpire said play ball, it was time to play and it was time to kick butt, and that's what they did.
After finishing 26 games out of first place in 1992, the Phillies charged to the top of the National League East the next season, winning 97 games and a reputation as a rowdy gang of nonconformists.
You had these headlines in Atlanta, women and children off the street, the Phillies are coming to town. The media hated us because we wouldn't give them anything. We just wanted to go back in the training room and drink beer.
It was them against the world. In a lot of ways, that's how they fueled themselves to win, because most of those guys were not great stars. They had banded together for this one shot.
At the center of Philadelphia's irregulars was closer Mitch Williams. Affectionately known as Wild Thing, the left-hander saved 43 games, while behaving in ways strangely close to Charlie Sheen's character in the film Major League.
He likes to pitch with his hair is on fire. The long hair, he's got the wind-up where he's falling off the mound.
I had a chance to face him when he was in Chicago, and it was one over the head, one out on the corner.
Whoa, he threw it behind him.
There was sometimes when it was manufactured bad control, and sometimes when you go out there and I just didn't know where it was going.
He was put on that team to drive Jim Fregosi absolutely nuts. After the 92 season, Fregosi quit smoking. And either the first time he saw Mitch or the first time he saw Mitch in a game, he started smoking again.
Walking on 4 pitches.
Mitch Williams was a pack for 1 inning guy.
The problem with Williams was you like your closer to be a guy that gives you a feeling like we're in the driver's seat here, not one that takes you on some kind of crazy thrill ride.
After taking the East by 3 games, the Phils faced the Braves, winners of 104 games in the NLCS. History stood squarely on Atlanta's side. Since the League Championship Series began in 1969, no team with that many victories had failed to make it to the World Series. Williams and his teammates defied those odds.
Swing and a miss, struck him out! Phillies are the 93 National League champions!
Mitchie Poo saved 2 games and he won 2 games. He had to win 4, and he was a part of every one of those wins against Atlanta to get us to the World Series.
Although Williams picked up a save in Game 2 of the World Series against Toronto, it was clear to some that after 71 appearances, Wild Thing was wearing down.
And the World Series is even at 1 win apiece.
As we got into October that year, the only thing dropping more than the temperature was the velocity on Mitch's fastball.
Concern about Williams lately from the Phillies standpoint has been his velocity. It has been down.
I heard numbers that his 94-mile-an-hour fastball was 83 miles an hour.
He was out of bullets. He had thrown so much, so often, and he was on fumes.
In the 8th inning of Game 4, after the Blue Jays scored 1 run and had 2 runners on base, Williams was handed the ball and a 4-run lead. What followed was sheer madness.
Mitch Williams needed to get 5 outs before he gave up 5 runs. Couldn't do it.
The 1-1. Line to center. Dykstra can't get it. 2-run score. It's 14-13.
People think Game 6 was the deciding game in it, and I honestly thought Game 4 was, because we had such a commanding lead. I come in, and everything they hit found a hole.
Little looper. Long run for Dykstra. In right center. Can't get it.
As Philadelphia fans looked on in horror, Toronto rocked Williams, scoring 5 more runs on 3 hits and a walk to win 15-14. Down 3-1, the Phillies again faced the cold specter of historical improbability.
I stunk. There's no other way to put it. I didn't get him out when I had to get him out.
Can the Phillies possibly get up off the mat?
Well, Chris, I think it's very difficult to come back and win 3 games against this club in a row.
In Game 5, Curt Schilling staved off elimination by throwing a 2-0 shutout. Then down 5-1 in Game 6, the Phillies rallied in the 7th inning. A 3-run homer by Lenny Dykstra and an RBI single by Dave Hollins tied the score.
And Incaviglia drives one to center. Hollins comes to the plate to make it 6-5 Phillies.
After surviving a bases-loaded scare in the 8th inning, manager Jim Fregosi again called on Williams to protect that 1-run lead in the 9th.
I think that the feeling that almost everybody had was, oh no.
Ball 4. Williams walks Henderson on 4 pitches to open the 9th.
After retiring Devon White, Williams faced Paul Molitor, who was hitting .435 in the postseason.
Line into center, falling fast to hit. 3rd of the night for Molitor. Henderson stops at 2nd.
Next up was more potential trouble. But Joe Carter, with 33 home runs and 121 RBIs in 1993, had yet to figure out Williams, against whom he was 0 for 4.
Now the 2-2. Well hit down the left field line. Way back in.
I can remember thinking when he hit it, and my first thought was, oh my God, I just saw one of the greatest moments in the history of the game. And then my second thought is, holy crap, our season's over.
The winners and still world champions, the Toronto Blue Jays.
I've always said I made the mistake, and it was a mistake, a blatant mistake. To Joe Carter, who was one of the few down-and-in right-handed hitters in baseball, terrible pitch.
I'm not going to sit here and make excuses for nobody. I just didn't get it done.
If I suck, there isn't anyone that's going to tell me I suck worse than I believe it myself. I know when I stink.
There was a couple games in that series where if he would have done his job, so to speak, that the outcome of the series would have been reversed.
He's the last guy out there on the mound. Mitch is going to be blamed for as long as there's baseball.
It's pretty simple in this town. Forever in his life, Mitch Williams will be remembered for losing the World Series.
That's the conventional wisdom behind Philadelphia's vilification of Mitch Williams. Rabid to their core, Philly fans still may not be willing to let the wild thing off the hook. In a few minutes, we'll make our case by counting down the top 5 reasons you can't blame Mitch Williams. But first, consider some points in Williams' favor that did not make the short list. We call them the best of the rest.
Failed starts. Other than Schilling's shutout, the Phillies starters were less than effective. In 5 other games, they gave up 25 earned runs and 35 hits in 24 1/3 innings. Not one made it through the 7th inning.
That's silly to blame Mitch Williams because I didn't pitch well. Tommy Green didn't pitch well.
You just got to have that mentality to pitch in a World Series, and I think a few of those guys were a little scared.
Another best of the rest, Dave Hollins. Up 14-9 with 2 on and 1 out in the 8th inning of Game 4, the Phillies' third baseman failed to handle Molitor's grounder, allowing the first of 6 runs to cross the plate that inning.
I should have knocked that ball down, and it led to more runs. So it's part of the 15-14 game that we all got to live with.
Bud Selig. Then the owner of the Brewers, he failed to re-sign free agent and future Hall of Famer Paul Molitor, who became a Blue Jay for the 1993 season.
It's all Bud Selig's fault. If Bud Selig does the right thing and keeps
Paul Molitor in Milwaukee, then Philadelphia has a chance to win that series.
In all of the things that Bud has done in his career, nothing is a bigger disgrace than lowballing his favorite player.
When Selig offered him $5.2 million over 2 years, Molitor signed with the Blue Jays for $13 million over 3 years. In 1993, he hit a career-high 22 home runs, and his .332 batting average was second highest in the league. More to the point, Molitor hit .500 against Philadelphia and set a World Series record by scoring 10 runs.
Line into center, falling fast to hit. Third of the night for Molitor.
As I headed into that postseason in '93, it was one of those periods of my career where, as a hitter, things really slowed down. You didn't chase bad pitches. Your swing was short. You're physically strong.
Oh, it's tattooed. Forget this one. Deep left field and gone.
You let a good hitter like Paul Molitor get away in its economics, and it looks bad. It looks foolish. Yeah, we can blame Bud Selig.
If I wouldn't have been in Toronto, I'm not going to be the person to say that Philadelphia would have won that series, that's for sure. But, hey, commissioner always gets blamed for something, right?
One reason down, 4 to go. Here's reason number 4.
Death threats. In the aftermath of Williams' collapse in Game 4, some fans responded with a deluge of hatred, while a few others resorted with behavior punishable by jail time.
This was beyond nasty. That's why you've got to blame the Philadelphia fans for that loss. That's got to affect you. I don't care who you are.
Williams didn't learn of the threats until after Game 5, while he was loading his truck for a trip to his ranch in Texas when the season ended.
Well, I walk out to my driveway at 2 o'clock in the morning. I had a 9mm gun in my hand that I was packing to take home. Well, a flashlight comes on at the end of my driveway. I said, it's the police. They said, they didn't tell you. You had 2 death threats phoned into the stadium.
He went back out and then brought the gun back in. And that night, he just paced the floor. I mean, the whole night. We didn't sleep the whole night.
I laid there with it right underneath my pillow. Every little noise I heard, I was up exploring.
It was very scary. I think it definitely added to the pressure, but, you know, he would never admit that. He would never say that's why I couldn't come through that night.
The guy didn't sleep a whole night. He missed a workout yesterday. No, it's just not right.
I'm not really quite sure there's any way that any pro athlete can go out into a field, particularly in the World Series, and be able to sort of segregate that concern and somehow block it out of their head.
Ball 4.
No. It didn't have a thing to do with my performance. I walked out in Game 6, I felt fine. Just didn't work out.
If you're going to talk about all the other things that led up to the home run by Joe Carter, you can't discount the fact that the guy had to deal with this. But it definitely has to be factored in.
One of the more curious stories to come out of the 1993 World Series was Curt Schilling's habit of hiding his face under a towel when Williams took the mound.
That's probably one of the worst things I've ever seen in baseball. I'm not alone. I think it bothered everybody. It bothered Mitch.
And the towel is back over the eyes of Curt Schilling.
I did it for the same reason everybody thought. I was nervous. Never had an inkling that it was a disrespectful thing.
I figure if you don't want to watch, drag your ass up in the clubhouse and watch something else. I lost all respect for the man over that.
Curt Schilling knew exactly what he was doing. He wanted to get more cameras on himself, and that's all it was about. It's a bunch of crap.
To me, it explains to people who he is.
Did our first 2 reasons grab you? If not, here's reason number 3.
Joe Carter. He was no ordinary Joe. Unlike such walk-off artists as Bobby Thompson and Bill Mazeroski, Carter was one of the most feared hitters of his day.
You got to blame Joe Carter. He could have swung and missed. The bastard. He didn't.
Joe Carter was an RBI machine. When men were in scoring position, he became a great hitter.
Over 16 seasons, Carter hit 30 or more home runs 6 times and drove in more than 100 runs 10 times. down 6-5 with 2 on and 1 out in the ninth, the Blue Jays' top power hitter stepped in against the Wild Thing.
The run that would win the World Series is at first, and Joe Carter is the batter.
It's a pitch that's a fastball, tailing in. 99 out of 100 times you throw me that pitch, I'm going to hook it foul in the dugout or hit it off my foot.
Here's the pitch on the way. A swing and a belt. Left field. Way back. Blue Jays win it. The Blue Jays are World Series champions. Touch 'em all, Joe. You'll never hit a bigger home run in your life.
It wasn't like I gave it up to a piss-hitting second baseman that never hit any home runs. I gave it up to a class act that spent a long time in the big leagues hitting home runs off better pitchers than me.
Have we begun to change your mind yet? If not, take a look at reason number 2.
The rest of the bullpen. Although Williams was exhausted in the postseason, manager Jim Fregosi had little alternative.
Ben Rivera had a tendency to get wild. Bobby Thigpen had better years before he got to Philadelphia, and David West just flat out couldn't pitch.
We saw Jim Fregosi the other night go all the way with Kurt Schilling, 146 pitches. Obviously, he wanted to stay away from the bullpen.
We got 80 games out of David West in the bullpen. Larry Anderson was towards the end of his career. And as it turned out, Mitch Williams was at the end of his career.
In Game 3, Phillies relievers Ben Rivera and Larry Anderson combined to surrender 6 runs on 7 hits. In Game 4, David West gave up 2 runs on 3 hits and a hit batter. In the 8th inning of Game 6, with 2 outs and 1 on, Anderson was 1 pitch away from ending the inning.
Anderson's 2-2 to Fernandez, hit him.
I hit Tony Fernandez, and I walked Sprague to load the bases. Then I get out of it, but it turned the lineup over. So now Mitch is going out facing Ricky Henderson.
When Williams came on in the 9th, he did so to face the top of the lineup, starting with the greatest leadoff hitter in the history of man.
A byproduct of walking the all-time base stealer was that Williams had altered his delivery in an effort to hold him close to the bag.
I had never thrown out of a slide step in my entire life. Some of our coaching staff, they thought it would help slow him and Alomar down if I tried that. It's kind of a neat time to start experimenting, isn't it?
Williams has fallen behind Carter 2-0.
The slide step did nothing but straighten this ball out a little bit and take a couple of miles an hour off of it.
Mitch is getting all this blame. I said, I'm just as much to blame, if not more, for what I did. I didn't do my job as well as I should have.
Toronto wanted nothing more than to get into Philly's bullpen, and Williams just happened to be the last guy standing.
The Blue Jays were better. The defending world champions sported 7 All-Stars in 1993, and one of the most fearsome lineups no one seems to remember.
It's criminal how forgotten the Blue Jays are. This is one of the most underappreciated great teams of all time.
They were an unbelievable team. They were a powerhouse from top to bottom. They had speed, they had power, they had defense, they had everything.
I just think their lineup was better than ours. Their offense, 1 through 8, was more consistent and better equipped to win a championship.
Before the 1993 season, Toronto signed veteran pitcher Dave Stewart as well as Molitor. And then on July 31st, the Blue Jays traded for Ricky Henderson.
Ricky was a key to that ball club down the stretch. Whenever he got on base, he created some havoc and made pitchers really work and concentrate on him rather than the hitter.
With a lineup that included the league's top 3 hitters in batting average, Toronto's superb offense was most evident when Williams entered the 9th inning crucible of Game 6.
We had no easy outs, and so mentally you become fatigued because you're thinking every single pitch, this could be the pitch that I lose the ball game on.
Look at the people that Mitch had to face in that inning. Ricky Henderson, Hall of Famer. Paul Molitor, Hall of Famer. Joe Carter, possible Hall of Famer. The Blue Jays were just better.
Removed from the media's glare, the Blue Jays were in many ways an overlooked team. With the strike of 1994 and the rise of the evil empire in the Bronx, The repeat world champions quickly became yesterday's news.
They won back-to-back World Series, but it'll never get talked about because soon thereafter the Yankees were so dominant.
I think if you broke down the team player to player, position to position, pitcher to pitcher, I don't think it's surprising that the Jays won that series.
It's unfair to blame Mitch Williams for the '93 World Series because he was facing the best team in baseball, the Toronto Blue Jays. Simple as that.
Well, there you have it. The top 5 reasons you can't blame Mitch Williams for the Phillies losing the 1993 World Series. Maybe now the city of brotherly love can forgive number 99. I'm Brian Kenny. Thanks for joining us.